Clara Bennett stood on the porch of her small, worn ranch house and looked out at the dry, dusty land. The summer sun beat down mercilessly, baking the dirt and making the air shimmer. The cattle wandered slowly across the sparse fields, their ribs showing through their coats. Clara's heart ached. She had tried so hard to keep the ranch alive after her husband died, but every day seemed harder than the last. Bills were piling up, the bank was growing impatient, and the drought showed no signs of ending. Her son, little Tommy, ran out to the porch carrying an empty water bucket. "Mama, the cows need more water," he cried. Clara sighed and grabbed a bucket herself. She hated that her little boy had to grow up so fast, helping with chores she wished he never had to do. That evening, after the chores were done, Clara sat on the porch with a notebook, writing down her options. She had tried everything. She had sold old furniture, bartered with neighbors, even taken a few odd jobs in town. But it wasn't enough. The bank would foreclose in a week if she didn't show that she had some way to secure her ranch. Then, an idea had struck her, though it was risky. What if she could pretend to have a husband? The bank often looked more favorably on married couples, thinking they were more stable and responsible. It was not real, of course. Just a plan, a trick to buy her more time. She had heard stories of women doing this before, though never in her small town. It was daring, maybe even scandalous, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The next morning she went into town to post a small notice at the general store. She had written it carefully, trying to make it sound polite but urgent. Widowed mother looking for a kind man to act as husband temporarily. Willing to pay for assistance, must be trustworthy and hardworking. The clerk, an older man named Henry, raised his eyebrows as he read the note. "Clara, you really mean to do this?" he asked gently. "People will talk." Clara forced a small smile. "I have no choice, Henry. The ranch, Tommy. I can't let it all go. Someone has to help." She handed him a few coins for the posting. "Just put it up for a few days. That's all I need." By midday, gossip was already spreading through the town. People whispered in the market and at the saloon, curious and scandalized by Clara's unusual request. She ignored it as best she could, focusing on her chores back at the ranch. She washed the dishes, fed the animals, and tried to keep her mind on what mattered, keeping Tommy safe and the ranch alive. A few days later, a tall, rugged man appeared at the edge of the ranch. His hat shaded his face, but his eyes were sharp and observant. He rode a dusty brown horse that seemed just as strong and steady as he was. He dismounted carefully, leading the horse toward Clara. "Howdy," he said in a calm, steady voice. "I heard you're looking for a husband of sorts." Clara's stomach sank. She had expected men to be brash or too eager or worse, troublemakers. But there was something different about this man. He carried himself with quiet strength and respect. I suppose I am," she said cautiously. "But it's not what it seems. I only need someone to help the ranch, to help me. It's temporary," the man nodded. "I can help. Name's Jack Harrison. I've been working cattle and ranches for most of my life. I know my way around." Clara studied him. Could she trust him? Her instincts said yes, but she had been wrong before. Still, she had no other choice. "All right," she said finally. "We can try this, but I warn you it won't be easy." Jack smiled faintly. "Ain't nothing easy about a ranch, ma'am. But I can handle it." Over the next few days, Jack settled into the ranch. He moved into a small guest cabin near the house, but he worked alongside Clara from dawn until dusk. He repaired fences, helped herd cattle, and even taught little Tommy how to rope a calf properly. Clara watched in surprise as her son's face lit up, laughing and shouting as he learned new skills. Despite the work, there were moments of tension. Clara was used to being in charge, making every decision, and Jack had his own way of doing things. Sometimes fences weren't mended the way she wanted. Sometimes he would push for a different routine. They argued gently but firmly, and slowly they learned to listen to each other. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat on the porch together, sharing a simple meal of bread and stew. The sun was dipping below the hills, casting golden light across the fields. Tommy had fallen asleep early, exhausted from the day. "You've done more for this ranch in a few days than I could have imagined," Clara said quietly. Jack shrugged. "Just doing what needs doing." "Ranches don't run themselves, I suppose," Clara said, watching him closely. There was something steady and comforting about his presence. For the first time in years, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone. But the town was still watching. Rumors about their marriage spread quickly. Some people sneered. Others whispered with curiosity, and a few offered advice, some of it unwanted. Clara tried to ignore it, focusing on the work and on Tommy. Then came the day the bank inspector arrived. Clara had almost forgotten, wrapped up in her new routine. Jack rode beside her as they approached the small bank office. The inspector, a stern-looking man with glasses perched on the end of his nose, studied them closely. "Mrs. Bennett, Mr.?" he asked, squinting. "Jack Harrison," Jack replied politely. The inspector's eyes flicked between them, and Clara felt a pang of nervousness. Could they convince him this arrangement was real? Could they show him the hard work, the effort, and the stability that the ranch now had? "Your ranch looks well kept," the inspector said finally, but his tone was skeptical. "I'll need proof of income, work logs, and confirmation that you are a married couple. Letters, neighbors, anyone who can vouch for your relationship." Clara's stomach twisted. It wasn't enough to work hard. They had to prove something that wasn't true. Jack noticed her worry and reached out, gently touching her hand. "We'll figure it out," he said softly. "We've got this far, haven't we?" Clara nodded, drawing strength from him. Together, they prepared a plan. Jack would speak to neighbors, offer references, and they would compile records showing the ranch was thriving. It would be a challenge, but she realized she wasn't facing it alone. As the sun set behind the hills that evening, Clara stood at the edge of her fields, feeling the wind on her face. She watched Jack guiding the cattle back into the corral, his movements steady and confident. The ranch, though still struggling, looked alive again. There was hope. Clara realized something important. Sometimes help comes from unexpected places, and sometimes the person you least expect to trust could become your strongest ally. For the first time in a long while, Clara allowed herself a small smile. The ranch might survive. Tommy might have a future here, and maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. Tomorrow would bring challenges. The bank inspection, the town's gossip, and the long list of chores would continue. But tonight she could rest knowing that someone had stepped forward when she needed help most. A cowboy, quiet, strong, and steady, who seemed to understand her more than anyone else ever had. And somewhere deep in her heart, Clara felt the spark of something more than gratitude, something she hadn't felt in years: trust. The night settled over the ranch like a soft blanket, and Clara whispered a quiet promise to herself. "I will not give up. Not now, not ever. With him here, maybe the impossible can become possible." The next morning, Clara woke early, her mind buzzing with plans and worries. The bank inspector's visit was still fresh in her memory, and she knew today would be full of preparation. She stepped onto the porch, breathing in the crisp morning air. Tommy was already outside, feeding the chickens with small, careful movements. He looked up and waved. "Morning, Mama," he called, his face bright despite the early hour. "Good morning, Tommy," Clara replied, forcing a smile. She looked out over the fields, the cattle grazing slowly. The ranch still had challenges, but there was a sense of life returning to it. Jack was already in the corral, inspecting the fences and checking the water troughs. Clara walked toward him, her hands brushing against the sun-warmed wood of the fence. "Jack, we need to figure out what we'll show the inspector today," she said. "Evidence of work, proof we can manage this ranch." "I don't know if people will believe a fake marriage is real." Jack looked up, his eyes calm and steady. "Clara, it's not just about the papers. It's about showing we work together, that the ranch is safe and that we care for it. The rest will follow." Clara nodded. He was right. Actions mattered more than words. They spent the morning preparing the ranch. Jack repaired a gate that had been loose for weeks, while Clara organized the barn, making sure records of feed, livestock, and repairs were clear and tidy. Tommy followed them, eager to help, learning how to lift hay bales and clean stalls properly. By midday, the ranch looked organized and lively. Jack and Clara stood together, surveying their hard work. There was pride in their eyes. For the first time in years, Clara felt a sense of accomplishment beyond survival. The ranch was not only alive, it was thriving, and it was because of their teamwork. That afternoon, the bank inspector returned, accompanied by a young assistant. Clara's stomach tightened, but Jack took her hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. Together, they greeted the men politely, guiding them around the ranch, showing each part carefully. "This is the barn," Clara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We've organized feed. checked water supplies, and repaired the stalls. The animals are healthy, Jack nodded. And we've reinforced all fences to keep the cattle safe. We've also kept records of repairs and purchases. The inspector looked thoughtful, jotting notes in his book. He asked questions about expenses, the condition of the cattle, and their plans for the coming months. Jack answered clearly and confidently, while Clara added details about planting schedules, water conservation, and care for the livestock. They spoke as a team, their voices calm, professional, and convincing. The young assistant watched them closely. He whispered to the inspector, pointing to the way Clara and Jack moved and spoke together. The inspector's stern face softened slightly. "You make a strong team," he said finally. "I can see the ranch is well managed. The bank will approve your loan if your records are accurate." Clara let out a quiet sigh of relief. The weight she had carried for so long seemed to lift a little. Tommy ran up to her, excited. "Mama, they believe us. We saved the ranch." Clara knelt down, hugging him tightly. "Yes, sweetheart. We did it together." She glanced at Jack, who was watching them with a small, proud smile. Their teamwork had been the key, and something else had begun to grow. Trust and respect that went beyond chores and business. Over the next few weeks, life at the ranch began to settle into a rhythm. Jack continued to help with the daily work, always steady and dependable. Clara found herself laughing more, enjoying simple moments that had been missing since her husband's death. One evening, after the sun had dipped behind the hills, Clara and Jack sat on the porch, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. The cattle were lowing softly. The wind whispered through the trees, and the sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. "Jack," Clara said softly, I didn't expect to feel comfortable, not just with the work, but with you." She paused, unsure how to continue. Jack turned to her, his face calm but attentive. "Clara, I didn't expect it either," he admitted. "I came here to help, and I found more than I expected. I found someone worth caring about and a ranch that's worth fighting for." Clara felt a warmth in her chest. The words were simple, but they carried honesty and feeling. She realized that the pretend marriage had become something more. Not just trust, but a connection that felt real, safe, and comforting. A few days later, a storm rolled in. Dark clouds gathered over the hills, and the wind picked up, carrying rain and dust across the fields. Clara watched nervously from the porch as the first drops fell. Jack immediately sprang into action, securing the animals and reinforcing the barn doors. Clara joined him, helping where she could, while Tommy stayed inside with blankets and hot tea. The storm raged through the night, testing the ranch and their preparation. But Jack and Clara worked together seamlessly. By morning, the rain had stopped and the fields were soaked but intact. The cattle were safe, the barn was secure, and the ranch had weathered its first real challenge under their care. Clara looked at Jack, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We did it," she whispered. Jack smiled, brushing rain from his hat. "We did it together." As weeks turned into months, the ranch began to flourish. Crops grew, the cattle gained weight, and the local community started to notice the improvement. Clara and Jack's marriage had become more than just a plan to save the ranch. It was a partnership built on respect, trust, and shared effort. One quiet evening, Clara's son, Tommy, approached them. "Mama, Jack, I know he's not really my dad, but I think he should be," he said with a shy smile. Clara felt a lump in her throat. Her son's words reflected what she had been feeling herself. Jack had become part of their family, not just a helper. Clara looked at Jack, who met her gaze with a soft, understanding smile. They didn't need to speak. The meaning was clear. What had started as a desperate plan to save a ranch had grown into something lasting, something real. The bank loan had been approved, securing the future of the ranch. But more importantly, Clara had found someone she could trust, someone who shared her burdens and joys. They worked the land side by side, shared laughter and quiet moments, and supported each other through every challenge. One afternoon, as the sun set in the distance, Clara and Jack walked through the fields together. Tommy ran ahead, chasing a rabbit and laughing. Clara felt the wind on her face, warm and gentle. She took Jack's hand, feeling the strength and comfort in his grip. "Jack," she said softly, "I never thought I'd find someone like you. I thought I had to do this all alone. Jack squeezed her hand gently. "You're not alone anymore. Not now, not ever." Clara smiled, feeling a peace she hadn't known in years. The ranch was safe, her son was happy, and she had found a partner who truly cared. What had started as a plan to survive had turned into a life worth living, a life filled with hope, and the promise of tomorrow. As the sky darkened and stars began to appear, Clara, Jack, and Tommy stood together on the porch, looking out over the land they had saved. The ranch was alive, the family was whole, and their hearts were full. Clara realized that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and when you open your heart, it can lead to something real, something lasting, something beautiful. Clara whispered a quiet thank you to the universe. She had faced fear, doubt, and struggle, and through it all she had discovered courage, partnership, and love. The ranch was no longer just a place of survival. It was a home, a promise, and a future that they would build together. And as the night settled over the ranch, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope, trust, and the quiet joy of knowing that life, even in its most difficult moments, could bring unexpected blessings.